Hi guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be looking at the latest test server patch notes released today, only 12 hours ago. We're going to have a look at them, see what they say. First things first, before we get into anything else, this is test server patch notes. They can change at any point, so please don't read anything you see here as a guaranteed 100% it will be in the live patch. Second thing I want to announce, just before I get into this, the response I've had on the other video is just absolutely incredible, absolutely insane, so thank you for that. Keep it going. We're going to keep it open for a week, so another 6 days. Like I said guys, I'm very appreciative, and keep it going, trying to get it spread around. Let's see how many we can get. More people in, more giveaways to do, okay? But anyway, let's talk about the patch notes. So the first things we see, I'm only going to go over really the highlights. There's just some things in here that are really minor. It's not going to make a massive difference. The first thing I see is perfect defences in GVG, i.e. victory without losing a single point will no longer bind you to the territory you are defending. Now, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Basically, what was happening is that guilds were attacking a certain territory with a guild, and then attacking another territory, and they would no-show to one of them. And what happens then is that you're locked to one of the territories, and the other one gets either a free fight or a secondary team that you can't really put the same sort of team against them. Now what this means is no-shows, and winning a defense perfectly allows you just to take it and be on your way. You won't be bound to that territory. You can keep on fighting. Definitely a good change. So needed. I'm so glad it's happened. Moving on then, there's been some castle fight changes. I've never actually done a castle fight. I'm so looking forward to doing one. But they have changed the prime times around so people can get into there a little bit more, which is good. I like that. Next change, increase the buff gain from Hellgate mini-bosses from 120 seconds to 180 seconds. So what does this mean? It means that you're going to start with a 180 second buff, which means you have 180 seconds to kill another boss to maintain that buff. It basically means that both teams will have a buff up at at all times. I can never really see a team, unless it gets to like the last boss and you've killed all 5 mini bosses, that sort of scenario. I can't really see a scenario where you're not going to have a buff up, which it puts the fight on a little bit more of an even footing. But, I mean, all it's really done is added a 5% damage and defense for everybody. Which, I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one. Reduced resource weight reduction for gatherer backpacks from 50% to 30%. This means that gatherers now are going to have to go back to the town more and do shorter runs, less gathering that they're able to do. I don't really see why this change has come in. I'm sure there's reasons behind it, but I personally don't see why this change has come in. So I don't really like this change. I think it really screws over gatherers that have been out for a while, that are able to get around and be quite safe with their gathering. So all it really means is that gatherers have to bank a little bit more. So it's not the worst thing. It's not the end of the world. Moving on then, you've got added gear scaling to Infernal Hellgate starting at 900 IP item power. This is an experiment that we may revert in the near future. So, I still like that Sandbox is treating this beta as it is, it's a beta, and testing things, because some people have asked for gear scaling in Infernal Hellgates. Basically it means that flat 6.1 is going to be just the flat gear level in Red Zone, Black Zone Hellgates. Which means that if everyone's running it, there's not so much risk and the reward is still the same, so they're trying to bring them closer to each other. The problem is that now anything above T7 is only going to be used for Black Zone. It's only going to be used for Black Zone GVGs, because obviously yellow GVGs are all 6.1 cap or T6 cap itself. Red Zone is obviously uncapped, but still, like, it's basically moved the top tier of gear into only GVGs, which I can kind of understand. You kind of need to be in the Black Zone to be getting that T7, T8 anyway. The problem with this is it doesn't give much of a reason to do Black Zone Hellgates, I don't think. And obviously Red Zone and Black Zone are still connected, so yeah, this has been quite a controversial one. So a couple of things that I've seen happen with this is people have asked for red zone and black zone to be split, and black zone be a super sort of tier. I would actually like to see, so if this was to happen, I'd like to see red zone be T6, so yellow be T5, blue to be T4, which it is. So you've got blue, which is T4, yellow be T5, red be T6, and then black be T7. Give it more of a chance, or maybe a guaranteed hell artifact per run, or something like that. Something that allows Black Zone to be like, right, we're getting great fame, we're putting a lot on the line, there's no gear cap, but it's worth it. If we win one, if we get a good run, it's good, we're going to love it. Red Zone then is kind of that in between. It's an entry level sort of PvP loot, full loot. I think this is an idea that could definitely work. Other than that, I mean, there's been a couple of ideas. That's probably my favourite one so far. Definitely an interesting change. We'll see how it plays out once it gets released. Obviously, there isn't very long left, so I imagine this patch is going to get rolled through onto the live servers quickly just to get it tested. The next change, all hide mobs and critters are now standard difficulty. T7 and T8 were previously veteran difficulty. Tigers, mammoths are all now going to be standard. They should be quite easily soloable by any gatherer, any sort of leather gatherer at that level, allowing skinners kind of a little bit more of a free roam. Obviously at the moment they're kind of unable to, I mean the T7 ones are a bit more soloable, but T8 certainly aren't. And that means that basically they can't do any T8 gathering themselves, which kind of puts them at a bit of a disadvantage. We're going to move on to actually, we're going to move on to this one. This is a bigger change than people think. So at the moment, if I have a circle, I can't actually do it right now, but if I actually have a circle, and in fact, actually, we're going to use paint. I've not used paint in years, but we're going to do it. Where's the menu? There it is. So I have a circle here. If I'm stood in the middle of my circle right here, and I cast here, at the moment, I will move to that X, or move so the circle gets in range of that X. So I'd move to about there, so that the circle gets to that, and it's on that X. What's going to happen now is that it will automatically cast there, on the edge of that circle, as close to that point as it can. However, it won't move you. So that's a big change. People have got used to doing this at the moment, where they click outside the circle, move to it. I think it could work. I think it's not going to be a bad thing at all. I think it just makes the controls a little bit tidier, a little bit quicker reaction, so you're not wondering what's happened. But definitely, yeah, definitely a good change. Oxen now gain 5% move speed per tier. So this means a T8 Ox now gains another 30% move speed? Yeah, tier 8, 8 times 5, 40% move speed. Good math, Guskey. Anyway, yeah, so 40% move speed on the tier 8, 35 obviously going down to T7, 30 at T6. T6 probably going to be the most commonly used one, and yeah, having extra 30% move speed on that gives it some severe amount of movement. So that kind of answers a little bit to do with that. Maybe they're trying to put Oxes a little bit more used by gatherers even while gathering. Obviously, the gatherer backpacks won't be so good, so you can't just run a horse and a backpack. You might use an ox. Knowing they're a bit faster, you're going to be able to avoid a little bit more trouble with that. Potentially, that's just my thoughts. Mammoth Mount, not really going to make a big deal. It is increased by 20%. At the moment, it's got nothing. It's just normal walking pace. I think 20%'s fine, whatever. Watchguard towers on the Royal Continent will now attack blue flag players within range. So that's good. So at the start here, I didn't really understand what this means. Harvesting protection has been removed from all territories, which means you can harvest in any territory now. But the guards will kill you on will attack you on the Royal Continent. That's pretty cool. Which means Royal works the same as Black Zone. Obviously, you don't quite have the tier 8 resources there, but it definitely works the same as the Black Zone, which is nice. And finally, slightly reduced silver and loot in Ignited Hellgates. This means that the Yellow Zone Hellgates are less worth doing. So again, we talk about that risk reward a lot on this channel, and the risk here is very little, if anything at all, other than really gear trashing, and the reward is now slowly being brought down. Maybe we'll start seeing more people in the red one just because the risk reward is a little bit closer there now as well, so potentially we could see something happening there. Going on to the balance changes, I'm just going to go through these quite quickly. There is a lot of them, as you can see. So first things first, leather equipment. This is a massive change to leather, by the way. Added new passive, Balanced Mind, gives some damage/heal and some resistances. So it's a sort of combination of the cloth aggression passive and the sort of damage reduction off the plate armor. It actually gives resistances, which I think is actually better than damage reduction, so definitely going to be a passive that's widely used, and definitely something that's competitive with both the attack speed and CDR on leather currently. And they've removed the Constitution passive, which is actually the energy and health regain passive. No one really uses it. It wasn't ever really popular, so I can see why they've taken that out and replaced it with something much better in my opinion. Axes, they've kind of had a bit of a quality of life change. It's not as nerf, so to speak, so the cast time on Heavy Smash now is half a second, but you used to have a hit delay for 0.4 seconds, so when you cast it, it actually took 0.4 seconds before it lands. So actually all you've lost there is 0.1 second, not really going to be something that makes a massive difference, but you're actually animation locked for less time afterwards, which is brilliant. I like this so much. Heavy Smash is actually a little bit more buffed than it was. Again, a good change, because that animation cancel was a killer sometimes. It was really making PvE hard at times as well when you were standing in things that you just couldn't get out of because you were in the animation. Curse Staffs. Interesting change on the Curse Staffs. I actually believe, and I need to test this, but I believe nothing has changed in the grand scheme of things. However, it's still a minor buff. Minor nerf, sorry. So what's actually happened now is your first hit doesn't happen to 0.5 seconds in. Doesn't seem like long, but I was doing a combination, so to read off my combination to you, I was doing Vile Curse, Armor Pierce, Vile Curse, Aura of Decay. And that's quite a bursty combination when done properly. Now I can't, because that actual Aura of Decay hit is going to be 0.5 seconds. So it's not going to quite be as bursty, however that's not going to be a massive delay. It means you're going to kind of have half a second to roll out of it, potentially. That's potentially something that could save your hots on a nature healer. Maybe we'll see nature healers coming back in. We do talk about them in a second. So definitely some changes here. It does tick faster though, so it isn't a nerf overall. You're still going to get the same amount of hots off, same amount of dots off, sorry, and the same amount of ticks. So not a nerf, just makes the burst a little bit worse. Frost Staffs. Freezing Wind increases the damage area close to the caster. I don't actually know what Freezing Wind is. I believe it might be the Glacial Staff, question mark. Let's actually have a look. View me and guides. In fact, let's just do this. Sorry, this is not particularly professional, but you know what? I want to know what it is now. Is it this one? I don't think it is, but we'll have a look. Nope. Freezing Wind. Why do I feel like that's the one-handed? And it is. Okay, so that's interesting to know. Freezing Wind gonna have more range and more damage close to the caster. The closer you are, the more damage you do. Interesting to know. It means you can actually use that to get some burst combinations off. You can definitely burst with that, an Ice Bomb and a Frost Bomb landing all at the same time, doing the old Shatter combination. Definitely could be viable now, actually. Holy Staffs, this is not going to change that weapon at all. Salvation is the not the Divine Staff, the Fallen Staff, I believe, from the Holy, the Hell Artifact. Still takes too long of a cast and too long of a build-up for that to even remotely be viable. Maces actually receive a small nerf. I still think they're too strong, and they're kind of bullying out Hammer as a potential tank. So I like the fact that the battle howl's been slightly reduced. It basically means if you don't get hit by the root, you're pretty safe to get out of battle howl, which is nice. And nature staffs. We're going to come back to nature staffs because we've just got spears after that, so I'm going to do that now. Nature staffs have had the biggest amount of changes, so we'll get to that in a second. Spears, lunging strike and spirit spear, the two Q abilities on them are going to have basically you don't run out of stacks anymore. Lunging Strike means you can keep full stacks up permanently now, with no loss really. You're going to be able to just hit as many people as possible and do some significant stuff with that Lunging Strike. Spirit Spear, reapplying at maximum stacks no longer consumes your stacks, which is great because you used to consume it for a resist buff that no one really took advantage of. Instead you lose additional extra energy, so it costs more, but you apply you just refresh your stacks. That's a really interesting mechanic. It's going to mean that you can keep Spirit Spear up for a long time, and that's probably one of the highest auto attack, outside of Dagger, potentially, one of the highest auto attack damage in the game. They have also reduced the energy cost just a base. It only takes 9 now to get a full 3 stack, so they're going to have a lot of energy to be doing that. Forester Spears is just taking a direct buff. You're going to tick faster. It's now 0.3 seconds rather than 0.5, and increases the damage area. You're going to be doing a little bit more area. Inner Focus, it's a whatever change. It is a slight buff, but it's not something that's going to make a massive difference. I think people will still be using Forester Spears. So going back then to the nature staffs, the first thing we have here is Rejuvenation. First tick after spell hit, 1 second to now 0 seconds. As soon as you put Rejuve on the target, it's going to heal. That's good, I like that. And the stand time is only 0.2 seconds, which means the animation locking of Rejuvenation is going to be a lot less. It's going to be a little bit more spammable, and yeah, definitely a good change theme from that. I like that. Still means it has the same mechanics, 3 stacks, and then the 4th will drop it with the energy regain. So that's still there, however, it's still going to be doing quite a lot. Rejuvenating Mushroom. This is such a good ability now. Reworked. Now apply stacks of Rejuvenation on allies in a 5 meter radius once stepped into. Cast time 1 second is now 0 seconds, so it's now instant. Hit delay is 0.5 seconds, and aura duration is now 20 seconds. Area duration, sorry, is now 20 seconds. So you can put a mushroom on the floor for 20 seconds. It takes 0.5 seconds to get there before it's allowed to actually be used, I believe. It's instant, which is great, and it's going to apply Rejuve on anyone in 5 meters. That is so good for Zergs. I don't see this being used for GVGs, sorry, but for Zergs, this is amazing. Castle fights, city fights, this is such a good weapon now. Or such a good base ability, because you're going to have Rejuve stacks on it, everybody, potentially. Because it doesn't actually give a limit to how many stacks, how many people it can be put on. I would like to see a 5-man limit potentially, but interesting that they haven't put one on. I'm sure they know what they're doing, so yeah, interesting to see. Protection of Nature. Now I actually read through these pattern notes earlier, and I got very confused at this point. This is very similar to the Great Nature Staff ability, but we'll talk about that in a second. Resistance increased is now, you only gain 24 resistance, or 0.24 resistance. Still a huge amount, it is still quite a lot. You add a healing received buff, so it's now 50% increased healing while this is active. This is the W ability, or one of the W abilities. It's the blue hand on the nature staffs. Every single nature staff gets this. Very, very strong single target healing and making them ridiculously tanky. I like this. You can use this on a frontliner, just let them go in, go nuts, and with 3 stacks of your hot and this, they're just going to be able to run in and be pretty much invincible, and I really like that. Circle of Life, which is the wild staff? No, this is the not one-handed nature staff. Spell reworked. Heals up to 5 allies in a radius around the caster. The healing strength depends on the rejuvenation stacks on each ally. Consumes all charges of the healed allies. So you're going to remove rejuvenation off every single target, or 5 targets that you hit potentially. And you're going to heal everyone based on the amount of stacks that you absorb. That's incredible. If you get rejuvenation down on the mushroom into that, I definitely think this could be a Zerg v Zerg weapon, or a city weapon, or an open world weapon, but definitely something where you're going to be hitting multiple people at once at all times. That could be so strong. 11 meter radius. Yeah, that's such a good ability now. It's definitely going to be used. I think definitely going to be picked up for anything with like more than 10-15 people fighting. Cast time's only a second now rather than 1.5, which I like, and the cooldown's now 15 seconds, which actually in the grand scheme of things isn't much. You can get so many mushrooms off in that time that you can then run in off the 15 seconds and yeah, you're going to do some serious amount of healing. Living armor. So this is the part that kind of clarified it for me. Protection of nature and living armor were kind of the same ability, so I thought. But what they've done is remove the healing received increase. It was 39% that you used to get off the Great Nature Staff, as well as the armor and magic resist increase. You don't no longer get that. However, you now get a kind of reverse thorns effect. What happens now is you put this on a target, they get a little bit tankier, increased armor and magic resist. And every time they take damage, they get healed, which means if you put this on a target that's taking threat, they're going to get a lot of healing, a lot of tankiness, but they're probably going to get swapped off of as well. It definitely gives another defensive though, something that could potentially be picked up. Duration is 10 seconds, that lasts for quite a while, and the cooldown is only 20 seconds, which means you can keep this up 50% of the time. I don't know what the mana cost is going to be like on it though. Well of Life, which is the wild staff, is now 1 second cast rather than 2 seconds, which I like, because you only use this for Zerg v Zerg really, or dungeon or fame farming, basically big fights. I don't like the fact that 2 second cast in any of them fights is pretty hard to pull off. The heal per tick has been increased, so it's just had an 18% increase, and it's had an energy cost reduction. So all in all, nature has had a lot of buffs, a lot of changes, a lot of stuff revolving around the protection of nature, rejuvenating mushroom, and rejuvenation. Them three changes alone are going to make a big difference. The E abilities on some of these are also going to make a huge difference. So guys, tell me what you think of this patch down below. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and catch you later, guys. Goodbye.